for the hardest-hitting show in talk radio. The true progressive voice since 2012. This is Southpaws.
And welcome to Southpaws on the Pacifica Radio Network. We are the leaders of the revolution. I'm Darren Gibson. Congress can't get anything done because they don't have a speaker right now. We'll talk about Kevin McCarthy's failed attempts to be elected Speaker of the U.S. House. We have an update to the Christmas Day attacks on electric substations in Washington State. We have to talk about utter chaos in Ottawa County, Michigan. That'll be part of our Hammer Time segment this week. 2 winners of that award. Plus, we have to talk about what happened on Monday Night Football on January 2nd. Some scary stuff there. So we'll discuss all those topics and much more. Before we get started with today's show, a couple of reminders. You can follow us on social media by going to facebook.com/Southpaws Radio Show. You can follow us on Tumblr at southpawsradioshow.tumblr.com. You can follow us on YouTube by doing a search for Southpaws Radio. You can follow us on Mastodon by doing a search for Southpaws Radio there. And you can become a patron of the show by going to patreon.com/Southpaws Radio. You can listen to the show anytime at Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, Podcast Addict, Podvine, and Pandora by doing a search for Southpaws. Once you found our logo, you found us. We send links to our weekly episodes to our Facebook, Tumblr, YouTube, and Mastodon accounts. You can listen to us on Global Community Radio Channel 1 every Saturday night at 11 Eastern. And you can listen to us on great Pacifica stations, including KCEI in Taos, New Mexico, KZGM in Kabul, Missouri, and KEPJ in San Antonio, Texas. Be sure to listen to us there. We are recording this show on Wednesday, January 4th, 2023. We hope you all had a happy new year. And before we get into our politics, typically we don't talk about football on this show, or sports in general for that matter, but we have to talk about something that happened on Monday Night Football this past Monday. And joining me by phone is my co-host, Jack Prince. Jack, you have been a coach in football at the high school and college level, so I asked you to come on to provide your expertise in that sense, because I never even played in high school, let alone coached.
Yeah, I'm glad to.
So Monday night, during a live broadcast of the Buffalo Bills playing in Cincinnati against the Bengals, Damar Hamlin, what's his position for the Bills?
He's a safety. That's the defensive coverage in the middle of the secondary in the back. He came from Pitt. He played his college ball. It's just outside of Pennsylvania, and it's the University of Pittsburgh.
Yeah. And he made a tackle on one of the Bengals players, and he seemed fine when he got up, but then about a second, once he stood to his feet, next thing you knew, he fell backwards and was down on the turf. And it was a scary moment because we found out that his heart had stopped.
Yes. The actual contact, if you look at the replay, wasn't that vicious.
No.
But evidently, medically, it was at the perfect second when the heart pauses just before its next beat. Now, I don't know the technical medical name for that.
Yeah, it's a Latin name.
It's a Latin name. Is the determinant, the timing. It was just a bad, terrible piece of luck that the young man experienced. That doesn't let NFL football off the hook. No. That doesn't mean that the brutal sport of football, which we know has been inspected with the issue of concussions just recently in the last few years, a sport that leaves bodies in ruin, if not with the concussion, hips, knees, backs, It's, when I say backs, I mean a physical back. I think that America is beginning slowly to realize, even though this is a big part of our culture, the cost to the players is not worth the entertainment. But you're looking at a machine, Darren. You're looking at a $1 billion machine that now is getting more money than ever because of an increase in gambling. The NFL was started by a group of bookies. They weren't philanthropists. They weren't entertainers. They weren't men that said United States needs a great pastime. Baseball is not enough. Hockey's not enough. We need a game of football because it'd be just ours. We wanted to share it with the soccer people. It'd be just the American sport. No. It were guys that got together to make money. They were bookies prior to that, and they had the intent of making large amounts of money then, and that's only been perpetuated now.
Yeah, I had
and I'm
no
a man
idea.
I love football, and that's the problem with it. It is extremely entertaining. The passion of the players, the physicality of it. Let's face it, people enjoy that. You can go out and buy a video of the worst, when I say worst, the most dramatic hits of the year. And you'll see 20, 30 tremendous impact hits. And, you've got men that are 300 pounds and they're flying full speed. Some of the physics have been equated to a car hit, a collision. And, you're an enthusiast of how do I say this, of passion and group entity. It's to me, there's a psychological feeling in a football field when they're all together with a common purpose and objective. It is completely, totally, humanly, like just addictive to sit with 100,000 people cheering. But I've been in the locker room. I've seen the tape come off of swollen ankles. I've seen men with their eyes gouged, losing vision. I myself had a number of concussions. The helmet that I wore when I was a young man was a joke compared. And they kept saying, well, we'll improve the helmet, that'll stop the concussions. But no, they haven't kept abreast. So unlike most people, you'd think I would be saying that this is just a hard knocks of the game. Got to put up with it. That's part of the game. No, I think it's needless. I think we can fulfill our competitive urges in a manner, in a sport that's less damaging to the players.
Let me ask you this question. Do you think more padding in that area would have helped?
The helmet today is 20, 30% heavier than just 10 years ago. You pick it up, you wonder how they can support it on their neck. It is compact. It doesn't look any larger, but the protective measures inside that helmet, the lining and the cushion and so forth, is better than ever. Now, this particular injury didn't have anything to do with the helmet area, but they've done studies. Go ahead.
I was going to ask you, what about padding in the chest area? Would that have helped? Additional padding? Because they wear shoulder pads already, and I know that it comes together at the breastbone, but I'm not sure how much padding there is there. Maybe you can fill me in on that.
Well, at the actual breastbone, we call it breastbone, there is coverage with a plastic with a pad beneath that. One of the tendencies in the NFL particularly, and it's even gotten to the college game now, is to reduce the amount of padding, to reduce the amount of pads. When I played, you had to have knee pads, which is a thick rubber pad over the knee. They don't wear that any longer. They put wash rags in their pants on the college level.
Wow.
They'll stick a wash rag under that. The thigh board up in the front of your quadriceps was hard plastic with rubber, and that's not worn either. It slows the athlete down. So when you're going to get that bonus, when you're trying to make the NFL, you're going to take any advantage you can get. So safety to the player, they've advocated a lot of it.
Now, is that on the part of the player saying, hey, this is going to slow me down, I don't want this, or is this more of the coaches, the team executives saying, hey, this is slowing our players down, we need to do something different here?
Well, it's primarily the player's perspective. There could be regulation that insist. There could be checks, the referees and so forth. But those wide receivers, they depend on the greatest speed possibly attained and the people that cover them and then the running backs, and it just spreads. They started with the receivers taking the pads out of their pants. Now it's moved to almost all the positions. Not so much with the linemen. That if you look at the linemen in the NFL, they have huge braces on. You'll see 2 prongs of metal alongside of their leg because there's so many knee injuries, and they don't have to have that breakaway speed. So they have tremendous knee protection that the wide receiver or the quarterback just doesn't have. You know, the one thing, too, that I think we need to look at here is that science has uncovered that in any level of football, I don't care if it's junior high rocket level football, Darren, the practice and a practice that has contact. In every single practice, there is damage done just because of the brain hitting the side of the cranium, not knocking the person out, not going into a full-fledged concussion, but that repetitive, continual rocking, hitting the contact that you have. In a blocking drill, hitting a blocking sled, it takes its toll and is conducive to the phenomenon called CTE. Now, I have had in my own life tests because I got constant headaches, and I didn't play. Well, I did play a couple years of semi-pro ball, but I didn't have a 25-year career or anything. But the doctor said just with the amount of contact you've made, the vertebrae in the back of your neck are jammed together. You're going to have headaches for the rest of your life. That's when I was 22 years of age. A doctor told me that in Ann Arbor. And it's true. I've had those headaches. Unfortunately, I haven't had the phenomena CTE, but, you know, thousands of players have. The only way it can be detected is at the time of death. There is no way of counteracting it, but they have cut into the brains of deceased players, and they see the denigration of the tissue that causes the loss of all things, compassion, understanding. There's been a number of players who have murdered people that they found had this. There's been a number of suicides, a large number of suicides. The families suffer, tremendously. And what little glory, what little accumulation of great wealth that player experienced, it's all down the drain when they suffer that kind of tragedy in a family.
Yes.
Think of that.
Let's get back to the equipment for a couple of minutes here. Now, there have been deaths in other sports. For example, in the National Hockey League, there was a player who was hit in the head with a puck and died on the ice. Mm-hmm. As a result of that, the National Hockey League mandated helmets for every player on the field. And that was about the time that some players wore helmets. Other players said, no, we're not going to wear helmets. It impedes my vision. It slows me down. It does whatever. Same thing with NASCAR. Drivers used to drive mostly with open face helmets. Mm-hmm. The closed helmets came in the late 90s and early 2000s, and it wasn't mandated. They started experimenting with different devices to support the head and neck, the Hans device, and then there was another device that IndyCar and kart had used at the time that was allowed more maneuverability, but was equally as effective. And a lot of the drivers in NASCAR refused it. Then when Dale Earnhardt died in the Daytona 500 in 2001, NASCAR put their foot down and said, okay, no more open helmets. You're all wearing either the Hans device or the other device. And then by 2002, they said Hans device only, nothing else. You have to wear it. You have to have the wraparound helmet. No more open face helmet. Baseball, for that matter, there have been players who have been severely injured getting beamed in the head by a wild pitch.
Right.
Batters have to wear hard helmets now. They can't just wear caps. They can't just go out there without a helmet. Is it time for the NFL to say, okay, this is the mandatory minimum that you have to wear for protection?
Well, they have had real improvement in the area of helmets.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that you have to understand about the NFL is that it has shareholders and it has people that are making billions of dollars off of what many of the players call the plantation system. They call the NFL the plantation. These are physical specimens of human beings that exceed the normal size, speed, and combination of size and speed and competitiveness, gather together, competing against each other. It's a modern-day gladiator scene. So the NFL wants to keep them healthy. They'll do certain things, but there's an inherent danger of brutality within the sport itself. And the history of the NFL has been slow, has been behind, has had to have been pushed. One of the ways they were pushed was the movie within the last 3 years, A Concussion. I don't know if you saw it. Mm-hmm. Denzel Washington, I believe, was the star. Woke people up to that reality. I recommend to the listeners, if they really are concerned and interested in this topic, to get a book called North Dallas 40. You can buy that on Amazon. It's written by a man named Pete Gent. Pete Gent wrote the book as a Dallas Cowboy, America's team at that time, back in the 60s. He talked about the open drugs given to the players when they went through the lunch line. You got your main dish, you got your dessert, then at the end there was little white cups and any drug you needed, speed, pain relievers, et cetera, et cetera. He talked about the unreported suicides of players that competed for parts, were cut or lost their career, and that was all covered over by the NFL. It was so revealing in the 60s that the NFL banned Pete Gent, who was an all-pro wide receiver for the Dallas Cowboys, from going to any NFL functions. He couldn't even go to a game. The book was that controversial, and it is kind of a precursor to the unattentiveness of the NFL and the safety and concern for players. There are many people who squawked, rightfully so, that the NFL was slow in canceling the game there in Cincinnati. They sat for an hour after the players left, and there's reports that the commissioner of the NFL wanted to get him back out there and play. There's always money involved in 2 minutes of play. There's advertisers. But the NFL decided, I think, because primarily the coaches and the players said, screw you. We're not going to come back out to the stadium. We're not going to play. We just saw a man who looked like he was dying in his uniform, and we're not going to play. Now, I'm not here to crucify the NFL. I know that the expendable commodity is the health and life of those players. The stadiums and the billions of dollars that are spent in advertising and gambling and so forth has a tendency to overlook that, and that's sad. You've played football. You've played football in a backyard. Everybody has gotten that football out and played touch or flag football. How fast and just how much combat and collision there is in the game, and it's addictive. But I would like to say on the show, I told my sons that I prefer they stuck with guitars. They both play guitar, and my one son only played 1 year of football. I did not push them, and I'd be very hesitant to tell grandsons, unless they dearly loved it, to find their passion somewhere else. It's too dangerous. It's been proven to debilitate human beings, and there's too much life that they can do, too many other things.
Absolutely. And speaking of the canceling of the game, I want to go back to something that happened a few years ago, not in football, but in what many people don't even consider a sport, professional wrestling. Yeah, it's entertainment. But back in 1999, a WWF professional wrestler by the name of Owen Hart, part of the Hart Wrestling Dynasty, was going to be lowered as part of a stunt from the top of the Kemper Arena in Kansas City, Missouri. That was his ring entrance for a Intercontinental title match, I believe. And the harness, something happened with the harness. It released early, and he fell 80 feet to his death on live pay-per-view television.
Wow.
And at the time, Vince McMahon, the owner of the WWF, they carted Owen off. They were doing CPR on him as they wheeled him out of the arena in front of all the fans, in front of a pay-per-view audience.
Mm-hmm.
And he made the decision the show must go on, and they kept the pay-per-view going, even though there were wrestlers that were performing in a ring that just saw one of their friends die in it. As a matter of fact, there was a pool of blood in the corner where he struck the turnbuckles.
Terrible.
And they still kept going.
They kept going.
I have to applaud the NFL for stopping this, because there has been a precedent for it.
Yeah.
There has been one NFL player who died on the field, and that happened in 1971 during the Detroit Lions hosting the Chicago Bears on CBS television. The guy's named Chuck Hughes. Did you see that game when it happened at the time back in 71?
I did not see it live. I saw it very soon after, and I wasn't there. The historical account of players dying in all sports has a way of kind of disappearing. It's not something that's ever really, we worship and bring back the deaths of soldiers, rightfully so. But athletes, it gets kind of quiet. That's been revived, though, that what you're talking about in Detroit. Many people have posted on Facebook and other places reminding that this isn't the first near death, or death, in the NFL.
And by the way, Hughes' widow, Sharon Hughes, was watching the game Monday night when she saw what had happened.
Seriously?
Yes.
I know his mother was there and came to the ambulance.
Yeah, well, I'm talking about Hughes' widow.
Right.
Yeah.
She was a terrible thing.
Yeah, she was watching on TV from Texas, and I'm sure it brought up a lot of memories of her now deceased husband.
Well, I think the proof is in the pudding. We all do things in our youth that we had to pay for later. But I remember the eloquence and the grace and the beauty of Cassius Clay at that time, then Muhammad Ali. And they tried to say he had Parkinson's disease. He did not have Parkinson's disease. He had what was usually, in the old days, called punch drunk. But he had the same phenomena that hundreds of NFL players experience. And it took him to the point where he couldn't articulate. He slurred his words from this just a beautiful human being. And the glory, the excitement that he brought to the world was certainly consequential. But when you had to look at the man at the end, you need to ask yourself, what is the trade-off? Is it worth it? Really, is it worth it? Or Evel Knievel. Remember when he went over the Grand Canyon or the Snake River Canyon?
Snake River Canyon, yes.
Yeah. His family had to see him crash and splinter, the ramp and the whole deal. But we're crazy with that. I'm just going to say this, that we love that kind of almost threat. The storm coming, the thunderstorm, the possibility of these things almost we're attracted to. And it's a sad commentary in our culture.
Yeah,
I'm going to get out my croquet sticks. Remember, we used to go in the backyard. You have a drink and walk around slowly and hit the little ball. That's extreme, but I think it's gone to the point now where it needs to be some control.
Jack, thank you so much for joining me to talk about this pretty scary topic, quite frankly.
Yeah, Darren, I'm glad you spent time with it. It really affects all of us, and you've had some great questions. Thanks for letting me share with you.
All right, and we'll talk again soon.
Okay, buddy. Talk to you later.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
And that was Jack Prince joining me to discuss the injury to Buffalo Bills safety Damar Hamlin that happened on Monday Night Football on January 2nd. This is Darren Gibson recording an update on Friday, January 6, 2023 regarding a couple of stories on this show. The first is an update on the condition of Buffalo Bills safety Damar Hamlin. As of Friday, he has been removed from his ventilator and he is able to talk. Doctors say that his recovery is nothing short of a miracle. During our original interview, I asked Jack Prince if he was the commissioner of the National Football League, if he would allow that Buffalo Bills-Cincinnati game to resume, and he said no. We also have news on that front. The National Football League has officially announced that that game that was originally played Monday night has now been canceled. And I have to agree with that decision to cancel that game. So kudos to the NFL for canceling that football game. It was definitely needed. We also have an update on the chaos in Washington, D.C. As of noontime on Friday, the House of Representatives is voting yet again, the 12th time around, on electing a new speaker. There have been 11 votes already. Kevin McCarthy has not secured enough votes in the previous 11 rounds to secure the speaker's seat. So they're going for number 12 as we are recording this around noontime on Friday. We will have more updates to that story as they become available. We now return to Southpaws. This is the first time that a speaker has not been elected on a first ballot since 1923, 100 years ago. So this is very historic stuff we're seeing in modern day. In the first two rounds Tuesday, 19 Republicans voted for other candidates, a number that increased to 20 by the end of the day Tuesday. Representative Ken Buck, meanwhile, suggested he might be prepared to move on from McCarthy as well. That is reporting from Darren Gregorian at NBC News. Rebecca Shabbat and Jonathan Allen join in further to talk about Ken Buck. Representative Ken Buck, Republican of Colorado, a McCarthy supporter who's also a member of the far-right Freedom Caucus, didn't vote when his name was first called on the fifth ballot vote. Buck said, quote, "I said to Kevin, at some point you got to make sure you got to either cut deals or you got to give Steve a chance or others a chance to see if they can put it together," end of quote. The Steve that Representative Buck is referring to is Steve Scalise of Louisiana. Back to Darren Gregorian for NBC News, a hardline conservative group that includes Trump allies like Ginny Thomas, Cleta Mitchell, and Jim DeMint is bucking Trump and urging House Republicans to kill McCarthy's leadership hopes. In a statement posted on his website Wednesday, the Conservative Action Project bashed McCarthy and praised the, quote, 20 courageous members of Congress seeking to change the status quo in Washington, end of quote. Those signing Wednesday's statement include Ginny Thomas, the wife of Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, former Trump lawyer Cleta Mitchell, and former lawmaker Heritage Foundation head Jim DeMint. By the way, Democrats are staying very solid on this one. They are all voting for Hakeem Jeffries out of New York. This could be real interesting, and I mean very, very interesting. Unprecedented. Right now, let's go ahead to our next story. This is from KOMO Television out of Washington State. This is dated Tuesday, January 3rd out of Pierce County, Washington. 2 Puyallup men were arrested Saturday in connection to attacks on 4 Pierce County power substations over the Christmas holiday. 32-year-old Matthew Greenwood and 40-year-old Jeremy Crahan appeared in court Tuesday on charges of conspiracy to damage energy facilities. Greenwood also faces a charge of possession of an unregistered firearm. If convicted, the 2 men could face up to 20 to 30 years in prison. Prosecutors are asking they remain at the Federal Detention Center at SeaTac pending future hearings. The attacks cut power to thousands, caused at least $3 million in damage, and will take 36 months to repair. That's a long time, 3 years, folks. In a statement Tuesday, Puget Sound Energy said, quote, "We want to thank law enforcement for the quick work in this case. The safety and security of our system and our customers is our top priority. We appreciate the extra efforts of investigators over the holidays and will continue to work closely with them as the investigation proceeds." End of quote. According to court documents, the 2 men broke into the 4 substations and manipulated the high-side breaks, causing the outages, but did not steal or cut any wire. They reportedly told law enforcement they cut the power so they could rob a nearby business. Wow. All of that to rob a business. I don't know if I buy that story, to be honest with you. According to the U.S. Department of Justice, the men were identified through cell phone location data, and law enforcement officials arrested them a few days after the attack. Video at one of the substations also captured images of one of the men and a pickup truck. U.S. Attorney for the Western District of Washington, Nick Brown, said, quote, "We are incredibly pleased by the work of the FBI, principally identifying these two individuals working with our team here at the U.S. Attorney's Office, able to bring charges very quickly. We understand the attacks in Pierce County disrupted a lot of people's holidays and were very, very dangerous. End of quote. When asked about other power station attacks around the country and in the Pacific Northwest last year, Brown said it's a national initiative to make sure these targets are protected. Brown added, quote, "We are still getting into the facts, obviously. We are paying attention to what happened in North Carolina. There have been prior attacks here in the Northwest as well, not just most recently. This is a national problem, but we are still investigating this case and a lot to be determined about the facts." End of quote. Richard A. Colati, special agent in charge of the FBI Seattle field office, said, quote, "I am so thankful for how quickly and diligently our investigators and partners worked to bring this to a resolution. This case took many of them away from their families during the holidays, but through their efforts, we have 2 men in custody we believe to be responsible for all 4 power station attacks." End of quote. The FBI served a search warrant over the weekend and found clothing matching the clothing seen on the surveillance video in the men's homes. Agents also seized 2 unregistered short-barreled firearms, one with a makeshift silencer, from Greenwood's residence. Yeah, they're going to hang him on that one. Some Puyallup neighbors were relieved to hear of the arrest, but stunned that the home is located on their street. Ken Cornell, who lives a few houses away across the street, said, quote, "I'm happy to hear that they arrested 2 people." End of quote. Cornell said he never spoke to either of them, but noticed all the police activity a few days ago. Josie, a nearby homeowner who did not want to be further identified, said, quote, "To see that they are 4 houses away from me is a little terrifying." End of quote. She was also curious about an alleged motive. According to court documents, one of the defendants said the motive was to shut the power to a local business to steal cash. Josie added, quote, "I guess that could have been the reason. That just seems unlikely to me. Seems more like domestic terrorism to me, but what do I know? I'm just a lay person." End of quote. Tacoma Public Utilities also released a statement Tuesday. In it, they said, quote, "We take the safety and security of our substations and all critical infrastructure we operate seriously. We committed significant resources to both cyber and physical security over the past several years to increase protection of our assets." End of quote. 2 substations in Graham and Elk Plains are operated by Tacoma Power, and the substations in Capsausen and Hemlock are operated by Puget Sound Energy. Court documents state that the substations are spread out over dozens of miles. The attacks occurred early in the morning and in the evening, and the 1st and 4th attacks were separated by over 12 hours. This makes it at least unlikely that an individual would simply happen to be at all 4 locations around the times they were each vandalized. Conspiracy to attack energy facilities is punishable by up to 20 years in prison, and possession of an unregistered firearm is punishable by up to 10 years in prison, according to the Department of Justice. Assistant U.S. Attorney Stephen Hobbs told the judge in U.S. District Court in Tacoma Tuesday afternoon that both defendants should remain in federal detention because the matter is an alleged crime of terrorism. Each defendant appeared before the judge briefly to hear the charges against them. A detention hearing is set for Friday for Greenwood. Crahan will receive a detention hearing next week. A preliminary hearing is set for both on January 17th at 10 a.m. The FBI is investigating the case with the assistance of the Pierce County Sheriff's Department, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, the Tacoma Police Department, the Washington State Department of Corrections, and the Federal Protective Service. So there you go. We'll keep you updated on what's happening in Washington State. Hopefully there's an update to what happened in North Carolina as well, because this is some scary stuff, folks. We need to have better security around our electric grid. We really do, because right now it's not much. All right, buckle up, everybody. This is going to be a long segment here.
Stop. Hammer time.
Oh, yeah, it's hammer time. It is time to drop the hammer on the douchebag of the week. We've got 2 winners for you this week, so anytime we have 2 winners, Wade Garrett chimes in.
A double douche.
Who is that guy?
Gentlemen, Wade Garrett. Holy sh**.
Exactly right.
Oh, yeah. So Wade Garrett serves up on a silver platter. Winner number one this week, the Ottawa County, Michigan Board of Commissioners. I have this story. We actually have several stories tied to this. This is going to be a long segment here. This is Rachel Van Gilder writing for Wood Television out of Olive Township, Michigan. And by the way, she was assisted by Joe LaFergie, my old friend at Wood TV, also by Lucas Steyer and Madeline Bursma. The Ottawa County Board of Commissioners ousted the county administrator and installed John Gibbs in the office amid a flurry of added agenda items from the board's conservative contingent, also replacing the county's top health officer and eliminating its diversity, equity, and inclusion department. The shakeup came Tuesday at the board's first meeting of the year, during which several new commissioners elected in November took their oaths of office. Commissioners voted 6-3 to approve a resolution that fired John Shea as county administrator and appointed Gibbs to replace him effective immediately. Gibbs was an employee of Donald Trump's administration. Last year, he was the Republican nominee to represent Michigan's 3rd Congressional District. He was defeated by Democrat Hillary Scholten. The motion from Commissioner Sylvia Rodea of Allendale Township was greeted with loud cheers and clapping from meeting attendees. And we'll talk a lot more about Rodea and her ilk in just a little bit. Rodea said, quote, "Our voters spoke very clearly about wanting a change in direction in our county, and county leadership starts at the top with the county administrator. And so out of respect for our voters and the need to have leadership in our county which fully aligns with the Board of Commissioners and who will cooperate and work fully and transparently with the Board of Commissioners, we believe it's important to appoint John Gibbs." End of quote. She added that Gibbs was much loved in the county, saying he had strong support during last year's elections, and described him as way overqualified for the job. Let's give you my opinion. Yeah, that's what I think about that. Commissioner Roger Belknap, who represents the Grand Haven Township, Robinson Township, and Spring Lake Township areas, said, quote, "I just believe that the direction we're going is different. I just think that bringing him into that, based upon how he was trained and where he was aligned with the previous board going in a new direction, I think we have an opportunity to start fresh." End of quote. Commissioners Roger Bergman of the Tri-Cities area and Doug Zylstra of Holland spoke against the change. Bergman said Shea was hired unanimously for his qualifications and said he was appalled by the motion to fire him. Commissioner Rebecca Curran of Georgetown Township said she was voting no because she was blindsided by the motion. Though she said Gibbs was a fantastic candidate, she said she wanted to give Shea the benefit of the doubt and give him the chance to work with the board. Zylstra also seemed baffled by the move, wondering why it was happening and saying Shea had served the county well since being hired in March 2022. Zylstra told Wood TV Tuesday evening, quote, "For me, it was an extremely disappointing meeting. I'm disappointed in the events of what happened and disappointed in the way that it happened. Firing 4 key employees and having that firing come through an amendment to an agenda with no public notice, I just think both of those two actions are going to have a lot of negative repercussions in Ottawa County for a long time." End of quote. He added that he feels sad for the employees of Ottawa County and that the moves take a lot of confidence and faith away for the community. Zylstra said while he will look for common ground with his colleagues in order to serve residents, he said, quote, "It will be very hard to find a lot of common ground after a meeting like today." End of quote. Gibbs offered brief comments after his hiring was approved, starting by congratulating the board members on their election. He said, quote, "It shows that the people are still in charge. The founding fathers are looking down right now and are very proud of what's happening right now." End of quote. No, I'm just going to stop right there before I continue with this quote. Let me give you the straight news, you conservative morons, especially you, John Gibbs. The founding fathers would take one look at you and say, why is he here? He only represents 3/5 of a vote. You know why? Because they were racist back then. I got news for you. You're propping up the wrong people. It's unbelievable. It is absolutely, well, it shouldn't be. Because Gibbs is a moron. I'll say it right to his face. He is a fucking moron. And for that matter, so are most conservatives. Absolutely dumb. Dumber than dirt. I can have a better conversation with a brick wall. Unreal. Let me continue his quote here. Quote, thank you to everyone for your prayers for the board and for Ottawa County. Those are being answered as we speak and will continue to be answered. End of quote. He went on to say he would be accountable to the board. That's code for I'm going to be a rubber stamp for the board. He added, quote, even though I am the administrator, I'm not in charge. The board is in charge. End of quote. Yeah, because he's a rubber stamp. The resolution to hire Gibbs was added to the agenda during the meeting. Also added by Rodea and passed 7-1 was a motion that changed the county vision statement from where you belong to where freedom rings. Yeah, more like where racism rings, where fascism rings. In yet another added agenda item, Commissioner Lucy Ebel of Holland Township moved to close the department's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Department, which was created in 2018. That motion passed 7-1. Ebel said that while campaigning, quote, I heard stories of people applying for jobs and they told them they couldn't get hired because they were white. That is hiring based on color, and that is not equality. End of quote. Either give some proof to your claims or just admit that you're full of shit there, lady. Let me just tell you what you are. You are full of cow shit. And people vote for these morons. She said she promised constituents that she would get rid of the DEI department. Well, Holland Township is pretty racist, so there you go. The department was created with the support of private donations. Zylstra moved to give the donors their money back. Without a second for that motion, it failed. So they're going to keep all the money. You know what? If I'm a business owner in Ottawa County, I'm shutting my business down and I'm moving somewhere else, and I'd tell the county why I'm closing up shop. As a matter of fact, I'll go one step further right here, right now. I am calling for an entire boycott of all of Ottawa County, Michigan. Every business, everything. Boycott them. I won't be attending anything at Grand Valley anytime soon. So there you go. I tell you what, you hurt these people in the pocketbook, they will change, they will straighten up. Period. End of story. Rodea said of the donors, quote, they really did get a lot of value for their money and they were affecting change. So much change that we are here today. It affected our people, it affected our children and our county. This is a divisive agenda, and that's why we're changing the county motto, and that's why we're seated at this table today, because our community recognized it as a destructive agenda that we do not want for our county. End of quote. Many businesses like to do business in communities with DEI programs, but Gibbs said he doesn't think the elimination of the office will affect business. He told News 8, quote, they're going to want to invest here because they can get the high-quality employees, and their employees are going to have a high quality of life living in our great Ottawa County here. I'm going to stop. He sounds like Trump. I swear to God. Continuing, that's why companies come here. We're going to actually improve that. We're going to continue to improve the quality of life. We're going to be working with the Sheriff's Department. We're going to be working with everybody to make sure housing is affordable and all of the other items on the agenda. End of quote. No, he's not. What a liar. Absolute, pathetic, bald-faced liar. In a statement to Wood Television, Progressive Lakeshore said it was appalled by the decision. The statement said, quote, "We're appalled by the short-sightedness of this decision and concerned for what that means for businesses and individuals in our county. DEI initiatives make communities more welcome for all and expand the talent pool for our business community. This commission has moved our county back 50 years in one fell swoop." End of quote. Yeah, right on the money. In a Facebook post, the group had encouraged residents to attend the Ottawa County Commission meeting Tuesday. In the post, it said, quote, "It's critically important to get and stay engaged in what's happening here as the Ottawa County Commission resumes work with 9 new extremist candidates on the 11-member council. These inexperienced and dogmatic conservatives were funded by Ottawa Impact PAC to support their extreme right-wing political agenda. There's a lot at stake." End of quote. Yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about Ottawa Impact in just a little bit here. Commissioner Allison Miedema, who represents the northeastern part of the county, added a motion to remove County Administrative Health Officer Adeline Hamblin and replace her with Nathaniel Kelly. The motion passed 7-1. Hamblin will hold the role on an interim basis until Kelly's hiring is approved by the board and confirmed by the state health department. Commissioner Gretchen Cosby of the northwestern part of the county added an agenda item to hire Cindy Driesinga as administrative director to the Board of Commissioners, a new part-time role. The resolution indicated Driesinga's role will be to coordinate with the chairs of standing committees and report back to the commissioners. That motion passed 8-0. The Ottawa County Board of Commissioners is now made up of a majority of Republicans who were endorsed by the Conservative Political Action Committee, Ottawa Impact. Commissioner Roger Belknap told Wood TV, quote, "I believe this was the culmination of a lot of people involved, a lot of voters. There was a groundswell of votes that I think led us to this point and the results of our election this year. It's, I know, something that's never happened at this level before in Ottawa County." End of quote. Ottawa Impact first gained attention in 2021 when it allowed an anti-vaccine group to march in the Georgetown Township Memorial Day parade it organized. In September 2021, Target 8 investigators attended a free lunch Ottawa Impact hosted for pastors with the mission to, quote, "preserve the conservative Christian heritage of Ottawa County." End of quote. The featured speaker urged pastors to direct parents to pull their kids from public schools, which he said were indoctrinating children against God. Right there's their agenda, folks. Next thing you know, they're going to be knocking at doors around the county, and if you're an atheist, you're going to get locked up, probably executed. You think I'm joking about this? This is how it started in Nazi Germany. Read your history. Let's talk a little bit more about Ottawa Impact. Our friend Jeff Smith at the Grand Rapids Institute for Information Democracy published this article on January 4th. On Tuesday, the Ottawa County Board of Commissioners fired the county administrator and replaced him with John Gibbs, a candidate who ran for the 3rd Congressional District in last year's election but was defeated by Democrat Hillary Scholten. This news, which has been reported by most of the West Michigan commercial news media, is presented as shocking news. And while I agree that the Ottawa County Board of Commissioners' decision was abrupt, none of what happened is in any way shocking or a surprise. Look, within the past 2 years, we have seen millions of people denying the election results from the 2020 presidential election. In January of 2021, there was an attempted insurrection at the nation's capital where only a few people have suffered any real consequences for their actions. In the 2022 elections, there were hundreds of candidates running for local, state, and federal positions, all of which were election deniers, with many of them winning their races. With this recent history, we should not be shocked or surprised that people in Ottawa County embrace the same ideological positions that those who participated in the failed insurrection. What I find most instructive about the local news coverage, especially the articles coming from MLive, which mention the group Ottawa Impact, is that none of the articles or the other coverages bothered to link to or to explore their ideological and political beliefs. The rest of this article will explore their political ideology. The Ottawa Impact Group is a 501c4, which means they can endorse candidates, plus they have their own political action committee. Their PAC is registered with the state of Michigan, but they have yet to file any fundraising data from 2022. That is according to the Michigan Secretary of State's office. Here's what their mission statement reads. We are committed to defending the constitutionally protected rights of parents to make health and education decisions for their own children. We desire to preserve and pass on the blessings and heritage of Ottawa County to future generations. We recognize our nation's Judeo-Christian heritage and celebrate America as an exceptional nation blessed by God. We oppose indoctrination of our country's youth and the politicization of public schools. We believe civic engagement ground up is critical to preserve a healthy moral society. We seek to educate, encourage, and support local leaders who fight to preserve Ottawa's values and work to eliminate policies which oppose them. The last sentence makes clear that the firing of the current Ottawa County administrator shows exactly what they will do when anyone opposes them. The Ottawa Impact Group has a contract for those running for county commission and for the Ottawa County School Board. The contract for county commission is 8 pages. The one for school board is 9. People should read them and not just dismiss them as lunacy, since these contracts will do very real forms of harm to people. These documents were created in March of 2022, and their policy agendas are very clear. For example, the fact that the Ottawa County Board of Commissioners announced that they were doing away with the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Office is because they say very clearly in the contract, quote, I will support removing Ottawa County from the Government Alliance on Race and Equity membership and discontinuing Ottawa County's promotion of divisive teachings aligned with critical race theory such as racial equity, privilege versus oppression based on skin color, intersectionality, implicit bias, systemic racism, and revisionist history, end of quote. In addition, the contract for Ottawa County Commissioners running as Ottawa Impact candidate also must be committed to removing any and all Planned Parenthood-aligned resources, view civil liberties as rights the government takes away, such as during COVID restrictions, but not civil liberties as in rights for people of color, queer, immigrants, or other marginalized groups, and parental rights specifically as it relates to education curriculum. With the candidates who run for Ottawa County School Board, they must commit to opposing curriculum that is seen as applying critical race theory, protect religious freedom, promote teaching America's true history, oppose controversial materials which they define as containing controversial sexuality and racial teachings. This contract also includes a commitment to support censorship of materials like library books. Plus, they must take a hard anti-trans stance which denies trans students from using bathrooms that are gender-specific. The anti-trans commitment is framed as protecting women and children. Under the Documents section of the Ottawa Impact page, there are numerous links, with the first being one that is used to vet candidates. This document has some of the same language as the other contracts, but also includes language about protecting the First and Second Amendments, being pro-life, in support of the freedom of businesses, churches, and individuals to not be subjected to what they call health freedom, which is basically to oppose any further government restrictions like what has happened under COVID. Then there is language under law and order stating that candidates must oppose defunding of the police and must support an America First ideology of closed borders, undocumented immigrants, as well as refugee influx from areas and countries hostile to America. Lastly, candidates must oppose labor unions of any kind. Some of the other documents under this section have more details on the contract commitments that candidates must take. There is also a news section on the website banner, which has only about a dozen since this group was founded. Speaking of founders, Ottawa Impact was founded by Joe Moss and Sylvia Rodea, the commissioner from Allendale Township. None of this information was presented by the local commercial news, which it seems to me is vitally important if we are to understand what Ottawa Impact stands for, what they believe, and how to organize to reduce the harm they clearly want to do. While they might get harm reduction in another sense, we got this story as we went to air. This is Michael Ozust writing for Wood Television out of Grand Haven, Michigan. The Michigan Attorney General's office says it is looking into a flurry of actions by new conservative members of the Ottawa County Board of Commissioners, including the ouster of the county administrator. A spokesperson for the Attorney General's office said, quote, "The Department of Attorney General is conducting an extensive review into the actions of the Ottawa County Commission's January 3rd board meeting and will make our findings public upon completion. Attorney General Dana Nessel is committed to defending the Open Meetings Act and recognizes the importance of ensuring that the people's business allows residents to participate in their government and that local and county governments operate in accordance with the established law." End of quote. So that's good news there. I hope Dana Nessel drops the hammer on them hard. Put these people in prison for a number of years. Lock them up. They're dangerous to society. Zero tolerance. John Brown, Popper's paradox of tolerance, whatever you want to call it. We need to protect society from these nut jobs now. Until these morons are gone one way or another, boycott every business in Ottawa County, Michigan. I'm going to. So winner number one, the Ottawa County, Michigan Board of Commissioners. Winner number two, Louisiana Governor, Democrat, John Bel Edwards. Why? Listen to this, folks. This is John Brodkin writing for Ars Technica. This is dated January 3rd. Pornhub and other major porn sites owned by MindGeek now require Louisiana residents to verify their ages because of the state's new porn law that took effect on January 1st, 2023. Pornhub owner MindGeek operates Brazzers, YouPorn, and RedTube. Those sites now state that Louisiana-based users must verify their age or they could get in trouble with the new state law. A criminal defense lawyer who goes by the name Public Defendering on Twitter pointed out the new Pornhub verification process in a widely shared tweet on Monday. The tweet said, quote, "Hello from the surveillance state of Louisiana. People in Louisiana have to use their driver's license to go to Pornhub. This is truly wild." End of quote. Again, this law was signed by Governor John Bel Edwards on June 15th of 2022, and it started New Year's Day. This was a Republican law. Governor John Bel Edwards is a dino. He is a Republican wearing Democrat clothing. You need to understand this. And by the way, I'm just going to tell you, this law does nothing because with a VPN, you can make the internet think that you're in some other state or, for that matter, in some other country. There's ways to get around this stuff. There really is, folks. You know, oh, but children are going to see this. Parents need to be proactive in what their children are doing on the internet, period, end of story. So to the Ottawa County Board of Commissioners and John Bel Edwards, we have this message for you.
Don't be a douchebag.
That's right. Boy, we're starting out the brand new year with a whole new crop of douchebags. It's unbelievable. I tell you what, folks, where's the liberty for the rest of us? These conservatives want liberty for themselves, and they want to put you in prison. Not figuratively, I'm talking literally. That's where they're heading to next. You mark my words on it right here, right now. That's going to wrap things up for this week. We'll be back next week. For Jack Prince, I'm Darren Gibson. Please support independent media, the First Amendment, and a woman's right to choose.
The stations that carry Southpaws do not necessarily share the opinions expressed on the show. Southpaws is protected by the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution and is copyrighted by Big D Entertainment. All rights reserved.